Hello everyone, Professor Little here. I wanted to spend a minute and say welcome to CISW 320, Introduction to Website Development. By now you have successfully gone into our online classroom and completed the orientation requirements that were due by Wednesday, January 21st at 12 o'clock. I've dropped any students that weren't participating. So if you're seeing this video, then you are remaining in the class. So welcome. I have a very quick presentation for you. I wanted to talk with you about a couple of things. So first of all, again, welcome, and the orientation is now closed and complete. So you have satisfied what you needed to do to stay in the class. Good job. I wanted to just take a minute, even though you're obviously familiar with D2L, I wanted to overview how I have all of my classrooms set up online. First, when you log in, you have this news section. So I will post news items here. Generally, if I have a news item here, I will also send you an email. So make sure that you have set up forwarding for your Los Rios Gmail accounts. And if you don't know what account that is, then you need to go to apps.losrios.edu. I send all correspondence to that account, so you either have to check that account regularly, or students often will set up a forwarding email for that, to email that they check regularly. So obviously this is an online class. You should check your email preferably 2 to 3 times a week. And if I have correspondence, and that will just vary depending on what information I need to provide to you. So everything happens in this class in the content area, and give me a second here. I'll change to student view so I'll see what you see. Anyway, so you go to content, and this outlines everything. And what you're going to see is I've posted the week 1 module, and all modules will be weekly posted, and then each one will have 2 subcategories: the instruction materials and then the things to submit for grading. So the instruction materials, don't let the number of instruction materials overwhelm you. There is a lot of information in this class, and so we'll introduce a lot of it in the beginning, and then a lot of it will just continue to be redundant, but I'm not going to be able to cover every detail, so I do need you to review these links that I've had, make notes. There's a lot of details and things like that, so you are required to review the instruction materials. And I will periodically check kind of in the background what you've been looking at to assure that you're participating in the instruction materials and reading those. You do have to look at this material in addition to reading the chapters of the textbook, and everyone should be having their textbook by Monday. So next week I will outline all of the coding assignments, and if you take a look at the course syllabus, you've already read that. It's in the class materials and reference. But if you notice on the course syllabus, in the grading criteria, you have case studies. And these are intended for the exercises at the end of the chapter. And essentially we will build on a website from start to finish throughout the whole class. We'll be doing other things also, but those case studies allow you to try the different HTML elements that we're going to be working with. One thing I want to also mention to you is this course outline. It's fairly accurate as far as due dates and times and things like that. And if I have any change, I would post that in the D2L classroom, and then I'd also probably email you. What I do want to caution students on is this due date. So these case studies, we do other things, but kind of while we're doing these other things, you also work on the website case studies for the Java Jam exercises, and I'll review those next week. But it can be tempting for students to see, oh, this is due February 15th, and I can kind of put this off and focus on something else I have to get done now. I advise you do not do that. So pretty much you guys should be trying to complete at least 1 chapter a week. So for this case study number 1, the first week you're getting your book, which is this week right now. So next week, you will, probably have to review chapter 1 and then chapter 2 and start coding on chapter 2. I also recommend that you don't just jump to the exercises that I'm assigning. You actually complete the hands-on practice exercises in the interior of the chapters and then go to complete the case studies. And again, I'll talk more about those in our next week lecture. So really you should go ahead and read the course syllabus in its entirety. I think that was already fairly clear in the discussion. So back to content. Again, this is where everything happens. Everything's outlined by modules. You have instruction materials, things to submit for grading. So this week, the things that you have to submit for grading, the only thing actually due is this class introduction discussion board. And then also, you can access everything using this navigation bar at the top. So this discussion shown under things to submit for grading, you could also access that from the course discussion. So you'll see if you read the syllabus carefully that everything is tied as far as due dates and things. So general due dates are Sundays by 11:59 p.m. and then you have the project due dates, which are the case studies, and again I'll speak more about those next week. So lastly, on the D2L classroom, I want to remind you about this instructor office. If you have a question, you can go ahead and post your question as a new thread, and then I will address your question. This is a good forum, so if you have a question, all of our students in the class can see the response to the question. I think we've kind of covered everything on the D2L. The last thing that I want to talk about is the class list for our classroom. You can email other students in the class by using this class list, and you can just access their email. This is also a quick way to contact me, and the little green dot means that that person is online in the D2L system. So whether they're logged in versus actually sitting in front of D2L, that would be another story, but this can sometimes be a good resource for students. Also, if you want to consider using the lab in B151 in the business building, that's always an option. And then also you guys are welcome to come to my lab period for another class on Wednesdays from 10 a.m. to 11:50. Now I can't guarantee you a computer seat, so obviously it would be better if you brought a laptop if you come to that class, but I'll really know how many students I have in another week or two. But usually I can find you a seat, so if you want to come to that class, or if ever you want to come to a lecture, you can do that too. I have a face-to-face lecture on Mondays at 10 to 11:50. So those classes might be slightly in a different area, but I'm certain that if you needed information, you would get some kind of information in those classes as well. Lectures are probably going to be a little bit more detailed and in depth than the lectures that I provide in this online forum. But let's talk about HTML. HTML is Hypertext Markup Language. And yes, you need to know that acronym. And essentially, markup languages are just that. They're markup languages that you use to display information on the internet. So HTML is specifically geared toward the structural backbone of browser information. So when I want to have a page on the internet, I have to code HTML to be able to get the basic structure. So there's lots of languages on the internet that are used for websites, and HTML creates the basic structure for all pages. So kind of think about it as the frame of the house. You have to frame the house before you can put the walls up or add paint or carpeting. So hypothetically speaking, HTML would fit into that category. It's creating the basic structure of the web page. CSS stands for Cascading Style Sheets, and that is another language that we'll learn a little bit later. We're not going to dive into CSS until I think week 6. So We'll do a little bit, but for the most part, we're going to be coding HTML for pages up through then. I think the book might introduce it a little bit sooner. I don't have my book in front of me, so we'll talk about that in a bit. So when we're coding for the web, it's important to use the correct type of program, which you need to use an ASCII text editor. Now, in my face-to-face classes, I actually force students to use Notepad. That is a standard ASCII editor that comes with all Windows PCs. And then for Mac users, you could use your default ASCII editor as well. If you're using a Mac, you might want to shoot me an email so I can send you instructions for setting up your preferences. There are some extras you need to do on a Mac to actually get pages to save in real ASCII mode. And basically, ASCII is just means that that's your character set, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, all the way to Z, and then the numeric 0 through 9. So an ASCII editor will only keep the raw text data that you're physically typing on your keyboard, versus a binary program like a word processing program or Excel. Not only would it keep the character set that you're typing, but a program like that would put binary code in the background. Like when you hit enter, it would actually code something you don't see. So you have to use an ASCII editor when you're coding your HTML markup language, because otherwise your page will render differently from browser to browser. So you never want to code in a word processing program or any other program. You have to make sure it's an ASCII text editor. There is a prerequisite to the class, and I don't really enforce that, but I do have expectations that you understand file management. You need to know how to create folders and files and be able to put things in specific places. So if you don't have the prerequisite, that's okay, but you do need to get up to speed on file management, because we do a lot of that, and it's essential skill set to be able to be successful in this class. So I want to talk about the directory structure that is required. Essentially, you're going to create a folder. So preferably, you should have your coursework on a flash drive. But probably some of you will be working on laptops or your home computer, and that's fine. So whatever you do to be organized for the class, and this is actually critical when you're doing website development, you have to have your electronic files stored in an organized fashion and also in the proper format. So the directory structure that I want you guys to set up for this class, I want you to create a folder for the CISW 320. Now, everything that you do as far as coding is always going to be in lowercase. You're going to see that my W320 folder is in uppercase, and that's okay for this particular folder. But inside your 320 folder, you're going to create another folder called public _ HTML, and that is going to be the root folder on the web server. And we're using a Linux server, which will not allow uppercase file names or folder names. So super important for you to code everything in lowercase, and that includes your folder and file names. Now, if you were using a Windows server, you could use uppercase, but you should just always get in good habits of putting everything in lowercase, because lowercase will always work regardless of who's hosting the server, versus if you use uppercase, then you're maybe going to subject yourself having to go back and rename things and take that extra time. So always just do stuff in lowercase and it will never be an issue. So I'm going to wrap up this video just to keep little chunks of this introduction, and this will just conclude the part 1 of this first video.